Hello everybody, it's Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to Book Reviews. So, today, The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. So, before I started reading Hugo Award winners, I was reading some list. I think it was like on Thrillist or something, and it was like I don't know, like 35 best science fiction novels of all time. I mean, here's the thing, it was like a crap list. Because what they did was they kind of just picked like science fiction authors and kind of threw their best books out there. And I was like, well, that's not a 35 best list, right? That's like 35 science fiction authors and their best work, which ones you should read. And there were things on there that ended up, like, by seeing a bunch of Hugo Award winners on that list, I decided to just read Hugo Award winners instead. So, like, but I read Three Body Problem was on that list, and some other things, like Stranger in a Strange Land, a lot of things like that. And this was on that list. And this is book one, I think, of 5 in the I don't know, the Shadow of the Torturer series. No, that's how it's called. It's called like the Earth of the New Sun. Is what it's called, and it's a science fiction series. And this series is not an exception to my original rule about science fiction series, like how at some point you shouldn't, like not many of them are good all the way through. And I didn't like the last book in this series. It was kind of getting old. So, the idea of this book, though, is, by the way, the quote on the back says, the best science fiction I've read in years, and it's Ursula K. Le Guin. And I was like, oh, well, that's a thing. Severian was born into the ancient guild, sworn to torture and kill on command. His is a story of a time so many millions of years hence, that all present time is forgotten. It is the tale of a torturer, fallen victim to love and made to wander through the world where magic and science are one. Yeah, so the idea of this is that this takes place in the far, far, far distant future. And society has kind of become like it has like a medieval like kind of caste system where kind of everybody belongs to guilds, though. Like, not everybody, but there are a lot of people who are professionals and they belong to kind of these different guilds. And this guy has apprenticed in the guild of torturers. And torturer is part of the criminal justice system. So like a judge can sentence you to be tortured. And tortured in different ways. Like killed, or just tortured in front of people, or whatever. And they have most of their ways of torturing people are very straightforward. They are just physical implements that they torture people with, but some of them are weird sci-fi ways. Yeah. So, and the thing about it is, so what happens is this guy falls in love with somebody who is thrown in this tower to be tortured, and after watching her be tortured for a while, he just can't stand it anymore. So he lets her take her own life. And it involves him being expelled, and then he has to kind of wander around the world. And so then through his eyes, like, he walks around and he kind of becomes like a freelance torturer, but you get to see this world in action, this kind of like medieval world where there are remnants that are implied of kind of what happened to our society. And some of them are very strange, some of them are very terrifying. And, yeah. So, So let's read a little bit. This is from chapter 11, The Feast. The day of our patroness falls in the fading of winter. Then do we make merry. The journeymen perform the sword dance in procession. Leaping and fantastic, the masters light the ruined chapel in the grand court with 1,000 perfumed candles, and we ready our feast. In the guild, the annual observance is counted as a lofty, in which journeyman is elevated to mastership. Lesser, in which one apprentice at least is created journeyman, or least, in which no elevation takes place. Since no journeyman rose to mastership in the year in which I was made a journeyman, which is not to be wondered at, since such occasions are rarer than the decades, the ceremony of my masking was a lesser feast. Even so, weeks were spent in preparation. I have heard it said that no less than 135 guilds have members laboring within the citadel walls. Of these, some, as we have seen among the curators, are too few to keep their patron's feast in the chapel, but must join their brothers in the city. Those more numerous celebrate with such pomp as they may to raise the esteem in which they are held. Of this kind are the soldiers upon Hadrian's day, the maitresses on Barbara's, the witches on Mag's, and many others. By pageantry and wonders, and freely given food and drink, they seek to have as many as may be from outside their guilds attend their ceremonies. Not so is it among the torturers. No one from without the guild has dined with us at Holy Catherine's feast for more than 300 years. When a lieutenant of the guard, so it is said, dared to come for a wager. There are many idle tales of what befell him, and that we made him seat himself at our table upon a chair of glowing iron. None of them are true. By the lore of our guild, he was made welcome and well feasted, but because we did not, over our meat and Catherine's cake, talk of the pain we had inflicted, or divide new modes of torment, or curse those whose flesh we had torn for dying too soon, he grew ever more anxious, imagining that we sought to lull his fears so we might entrap him subsequently. Thus thinking, he ate little and drank much, and returning to his own quarters, fell and struck his head in such a way that he evermore upon occasion lost his wits and suffered great pain. In time he put the muzzle of his own weapon into his mouth, but it was none of our doing. None but torturers then come to the chapel on Holy Catherine's Day. Yet each year, knowing we are watched from high windows, we prepare as do all the rest, and more grandly. Outside the chapel our wines burn like gems in the light of 100 flambeaux. Our beeves steam and wallow in ponds of gravy, rolling baked lemon eyes. Capybaras and agoutis, posed in the stances of life and bearing fur, in which toasted coconut mingles with their own flayed skin, clamor on laws of ham and scale boulders of new baked bread. Yeah, okay. So like Gene Wolfe, absolute master of painting for you a medieval society. Right? Great paintings at that. Is the pacing of this book super slow? Yeah. Yeah, it is. He goes into great detail. Here's the thing, though, is actually, if you want to start this series, and I'm not going to tell you not to, because although I was disappointed by the 5th book in the series, I believe it's the last book in the series, everyone up there was pretty good. Like, I really liked them. They were exciting. And once he lays a lot of groundwork for how this world is laid out, there isn't a ton of that left. There's a ton of kind of other things that, like, it becomes all about after this, after kind of the laying down of kind of everything about this world, which takes him a lot of this book, right? Like I said, this book is kind of a slog through the details of a society after our civilization has fallen, thousands of years have passed, and, you know, what is left of our science is kind of, you know, like, what is left of obviously an incredibly technologically advanced race has been in some ways salvaged, but like by an upper caste society, and like this medieval society has kind of sprung up. But after he lays all that down, it becomes so much more about the characters and the events and the characters get really amazing. So, like, you know, are you going to absolutely and totally fall in love with Shadow of the Torturer? Well, it reads like period science fiction, right? It does not read like modern science fiction, which in a lot of ways is good. Yeah, this was written in 1980, and it feels very 80-ish, right? Which is actually pretty amazing for a book that was written in the 70s and published in the 80s. Now, yeah, like Gene Wolfe does a great job creating a world, and then he really takes people to very interesting places, and he gives you a bunch of interesting characters, and there's kind of this, I don't want to say fantasy style medieval adventure, because like it really isn't like fantasy style at all. There are elements of fantasy. It's very kind of blurred. I've read far worse books. I know that this was nominated. I believe this was nominated for Hugo. It may have been nominated for Nebula. It may have won. I don't think it won Nebula. I'd have to look. But yeah. So this book is completely worth a read. It's absolutely worth a read. Like I said, it's very slow paced. But if you want an interesting series of science fiction books, this isn't a bad one. And I may talk about the other books in the series later on. But for right now, because this one actually got quite a bit of acclaim, and I believe the second one might have actually gotten nominations for awards as well. But like, don't judge the series by this book. Like, read the second book. If you don't like the second book, like if you finish this and you read the second book and you're like, no, I'm not going anywhere with this, don't. You won't like the rest of it. But I liked it. I actually, like I said, I read the whole series and I liked it a lot. And I really found the characters very interesting. It's kind of dispassionate. Like, this guy tortures people for a living, so there isn't a lot of feeling from your narrator. Like, he's a professional torturer. That's what he does for a living. Like, not even as as a lifestyle. Like, he treats torturing the way monks treat religion. And there's something amazing about that too, where he's talking about like the art of torturing and like how to be a good torturer. And I have a dog right here who's literally just like backing her butt into my elbow, so I decided to kind of push her back. Yeah, it's like I said, this was on that list, and there were some books on that list that I hated. A Mote in God's Eye was on that list, and I didn't like it at all. I think Babel 17 was on that list, and I was kind of like, man, it's really kind of dated. But a lot of great stuff was on that list as well, and this was on there, and it's a good book. So Shadow of the Torturer, if you haven't heard of it, the Gene Wolfe Earth of the New Sun series is it's a good read. Like, I really liked it. I really think he does a great job of setting, like, you don't think very often about how far into the future it is, right? You just kind of go with the fact that there's this medieval society. They're on Earth, like, I think. There's no implication. It never implies that they're not on Earth. The only thing is that there are these kind of, these huge constructions. And then there are also, kind of animals that could not possibly be except through kind of genetic alteration and things like that. And so thing like that. You'll get lost in the fantasy world, or in the imaginary world of Gene Wolfe, and this guy whose job it is to torture people, torture them. That's what he does. Torture. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, Shadow of the Torturer, Gene Wolfe. It is acclaimed. People really liked it. I really liked it. Yeah. But like I said, a little dated, slow paced. But I think worth it for the rest of the series. So next week when we come back, Terry Pratchett stuff. I know that for a fact because I'm going to run out of non-Terry Pratchett stuff if I don't do Terry Pratchett stuff. Bye, everybody.